Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first What Works X webinar of 2022. I hope you've all had a fantastic start to the new year, despite the ongoing challenges. Teachers, which we have seen over the past almost 2 years, they are resilient and steadfast in preventing barriers to learning. So well done to all of you. Today's webinar topic is coined How to Develop a School Wellbeing Program that Sustains Future Learners. We will take a closer look at how GEM's Wellington Academy in Silicon Oasis has created a successful and sustainable wellbeing program that we can all learn from. As 5 years of the Dubai Wellbeing Census Survey comes to a close, with individual school reports due to be distributed in March, and with it an enormous amount of interesting data, today we'll offer an opportunity to build on that data and to build on the momentum going forward with the right tools. But if we take a couple of steps back, what is well-being? Well, well-being is the experience of health and happiness. It includes mental and physical health. It includes physical and emotional safety and the feeling of belonging, a sense of purpose, achievement, and success. Student well-being underpins every aspect of a student's schooling, from their ability to learn in class and their ability to build positive relationships. And certainly educators in Dubai now understand that well-being is a fundamental component of the school experience, and it is just as important as academic learning. We also know that there is a direct link between well-being and academic achievement and vice versa, i.e. well-being is a crucial prerequisite for achievement, and achievement is essential for well-being. So how can schools build on the well-being momentum and make it sustainable year on year? Well, making well-being and a bespoke well-being program an integral part of any school ethos in a sustainable fashion begins with ensuring that students continuously feel they are valued as an individual in his or her own right, and that the school life has a meaning and purpose for them. This can be achieved in a variety of small ways, and today we wish to dig deeper into what those small ways are and how all of you can build on them year on year. But before we welcome today's presenters, I wish to simply draw your attention to a simple menti.com question as an icebreaker. So if I could kindly ask you all to sign on to menti.com using the code 95123976. I will post this in the live chat. I will do that right now, and I will also go on to menti.com. So I do encourage you all to sign up to menti.com. 1 second here. Let me just share my screen. And we have a quick icebreaker question there. So I would be grateful if you could travel to any year in time in a time machine. What year would you choose and why? So if you could travel to any year in a time machine, what year would you choose and why? And you see the code there, 95123976. So would any of you want to travel to potentially ancient Rome to meet Julius Caesar? Or would you ideally go back to the 1980s maybe because of the fantastic music? Or some of you might want to be catapulted to the world of Downton Abbey. I'm not sure, with all the clothes and the constant tea parties. So what year, if you would travel in a time machine, what year would you choose and why? Wonderful, we're getting our first answers here. 1789. 1789, what happened? Was that the French Revolution? I'm not sure. 2002 had an amazing partner. Wonderful, reminiscing of a partner. 2008, 2019, wonderful. You could write your explanation as well, just a couple of words why you've chosen the year. 1980s, cool fashion and fun music. Absolutely. My favorite era is for sure the 1980s music. 1990. Maybe possibly a football year, 1990, year 2032. So somebody wants to travel into the future to check on how we're doing, progress in sustainability, well-being, COVID aftermath. Well, certainly COVID aftermath. I would hope by 2032 we will be free of COVID. 1966, England won the World Cup. Way. 2012, when the world was ending. Uh-oh. Well, that's the movie, isn't it? Yeah. My school years, it was so nice. Let's see here what that, it was so nice, wonderful. 1900s, better social and cultural experience. 1947, so post-World War II. The 1980, absolutely. 1985, because because of its simple and developing lifestyle. 1920s for the amazing outfits. Absolutely, I would agree with you. 2011, the year of personal traveling adventures. 2013, when I was 21 and carefree. 2019 to stop COVID. Absolutely. 2019 again with life without masks. Absolutely. 80s again, great music. 2050 to see what challenges we would be facing then. Absolutely. 1977, the year somebody was born. Well, that's actually the year I was born as well. So way hey to 1977. I want to say a big thank you for that. And I do encourage you to please stay on menti.com, as we will be using Menti towards the end of this webinar for 2 more questions. So grateful for your answers there. And I'm just gonna go and but for now, I wish to welcome Justine Saxton, the Head of House Wellbeing Lead Primary, and Amy Cooper, Curriculum and Wellbeing Lead Secondary, our presenters today. I do want to say, should you have any questions for the ladies throughout our presentation today, we do encourage you to use the chat feature on the right-hand side of your screen. So ask any questions throughout the presentation, and I will read them out as we do the Q&A section towards the end of their presentations. But for now, I want to welcome Justine and Amy from GEMS Wellington Academy. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Magnus. I'll just share my screen.
Yes.
If you could just give me a thumbs up, Magnus, that you can see the screen. Brilliant. Okay. Yep. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. I know for some of you it's been a long teaching day, so we really do appreciate your time today. And just like Magnus said, we are going to focus on how to develop a school wellbeing program that really sustains future learners. And myself and Justine will take you through our journey here at WSO. And we hope that you can take away a few tiny snippets that will help you go forth and maybe develop your own Grow Well program or amend some things that you are doing. So we have our Grow Well program. You can see that the Grow and the Well, growing well at Wellington was our baseline. And our tagline is nurturing the growth, happiness and wellness of our young and maturing GEMS. Just a setting for you, for some of you who might not be aware of GEMS Wellington Academy, who we are. We have a student body of 3,290 students across primary and secondary. We're a co-ed British curriculum school. Most of our staff are coming from the UK. All of our secondary staff have subject specialisms. We have 197 different nationalities here at WSO. FS1 through to year 13 will look at the wellbeing program, and it's been open for 10 years. So as a solid growth there. Yes.
Thank you, Amy. And just to add to Amy's warm welcome, thank you very much for attending our presentation this afternoon. Amy, I'm not sure that the slideshow is on. It's still on the first screen. Could you possibly?
Oh, this is where the technical issues are coming in. If it's not.
I'm glad you're sharing and not me.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm talking you through everything. I might have to do this then, mightn't I? Can everyone see that? Can you see that now? Sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. If you don't mind, just to reflect it on full screen. Thank you. If that's fine. Thank you so much. Please go ahead, Justine.
Thank you, Amy. So, as we know, well-being can often lay quite invisible, and it quite often doesn't make a noise.
Sorry to cut you off, Justine. Just maybe enable editing in the top bar there, and that enables you to do full screen. See that yellow line at the top there?
I've put it on full screen, but is it not showing on full screen?
Yeah, it's not showing. Yeah. I'm
sorry, it's not letting me show on full screen.
Do you see that enable editing? That one there? Yeah, that one. If you click that. Further up, you see that yellow bar? You see that yellow bar on the screen?
give control. That's the only thing I've got. So
yeah,
sorry.
never mind. Just, I think we're on slide. Yeah, slide. Yeah, let's go ahead anyway.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No problem at all, Amy. Thank you. So as I was saying, that the visibility of wellbeing can be really challenging because it can lay invisible. It often doesn't make a noise, and it can inevitably shift as well. And our students also wear many different masks, just as adults do. So really identifying the emotional and social need, the core need of our students, is really, really difficult. So 5 years ago, when we were invited to participate in the census, we embraced the invitation. It gave us that opportunity, that additional opportunity, to have a valuable tool of analysis. So when we received our 2017 results, we viewed the areas of strength and also our areas for development. We continued with the programs that we had and the resources too, and we tried to plug the gaps and also boost our areas of strength too. But it was only in 2018, when we received our second set of the census results, that we were actually forced to hold a mirror up to ourselves to ask those important questions as to what our wellbeing footprint at WSO looks like, sounds like, and feels like. In the domains of social and emotional learning and in relationships and learning, we had dropped our scores in the majority of those areas. And this to us was for a concern, and we knew that we needed to be proactive rather than reactive. Along with the census and other contributing factors, we decided and discussed this at length that our academy needed a wellbeing programme. We needed to be able to expose our students to a toolkit of lifelong skills that they could learn, apply, develop, strengthen, and master. So in 2018, we designed the Grow Well programme, and we launched the Grow Well programme in 2019. We were very keen to see what impact the Grow Well was having. But bearing in mind, in 2019, when our students participated in the census, they'd actually only been exposed to the Grow Well programme for 2 months. But to share with you the responses and the impact that it seemed to have, 89% of our scores in the census had actually risen in social and emotional wellbeing. A further 82% of scores rose in the areas of relationships and learning. But again, the validity of the correlation between the Grow Well programme and the census results was questionable. So we keenly carried on with the Grow Well programme, impacting it amongst all areas of our academy. And then in 2020, we received our 4th set of census results. And we saw a continual growth, a continual strengthening of progress in the impact our Grow Well programme is having on our students across the academy. Our scores saw an increase of a further 64% in social and emotional wellbeing, and a further 75% rise in our relationship and learning also.
Thank you, Jess. I'm so sorry I can't get it on full screen for everybody. So we're just going to talk to you now about the structure. So going to talk to you about the how. So we just thought, why reinvent the wheel? Why come up with our own bespoke wellbeing programme when there's so many out there that you can pick the brains of or take bits from? Well, before 2018, we touched on wellbeing in assemblies by using existing resources, mainly coming from the UK and Australia, because like I said, most of our teachers are coming from there, so they're bringing resources with them. But something just wasn't right. And you've heard and seen in Justine's talk there that the census data did dip. And when we started it, we were seeing these low scores. We weren't making impact, and holding that mirror up to ourselves, we had to ask why. And it really came back to the realization that we weren't tailoring anything. We weren't making impact because we weren't tailoring. we needed to create a bespoke set of resources that catered to our needs, our students, and our context. And that's really important. Instead of trying to shoehorn our students into a culture that's predominantly UK and Australia based. Of course, using resources from these countries is more than okay if you're willing to adapt them to suit your needs. But unfortunately, the resources that are out there, most of them didn't fit with the context of Dubai. So the end result was our Grow Well program. So why, can you see that? Why we do it? At WSO, we've really thought long and hard about this. We want our students to grow successfully beyond the academic. And in our mission and our vision, we touch on students growing to be world-class and world-ready, helping students develop character traits beyond what we see in the classroom. We know that's what's going to make them successful in real life. It's not just the academics. They need to be hardy. They need to have that mindset for success. So through the strength of PERMA and ISHCA, the International Schools Counselling Association, we tried to help our students flourish in a different way. So we haven't taken the frameworks per se. We've used the ideas and the themes from ISHCA, but we have developed our own bespoke wellbeing program. So we have taken the 5 themes coming out of ISHCA, which we will go on to in a moment, and really cultivated our own wellbeing program that fit our landscape and our student body. Oops. So how we started and where you could think about starting. Start with the basics. What do you want your children to master? Where are the gaps in your data? Where are the glaring, obvious points where you need to address? Look at your school vision. Look at your school development plan. What are the needs that you need that have already been identified, and how can you tie those 2 things up? We started by getting our team of experts together. Ask for your champions. Ask for those people that have a passion for this, because that's how you start fires and that's how you create buy-in. By all means, go out and look and research wellbeing frameworks. There's so many out there, but you need to find which one resonates with you as a team. It's a great process to sit together and talk about the wonderful things that other countries and frameworks are taking other places too, but you'll know if it sits right with you. You can always amend frameworks, but it might be nice if you could take something and apply it to your setting. One of the most important things for us when we started, we got together and we said, this means nothing if it hasn't got a name and you can't associate with it. So we started very, very simply with our name, our Grow Well, and we were very, very lucky that the W of Wellington just suited, because we just wanted our students to grow well, be well. So it just felt right, grow well at Wellington. And that idea of the tree and the flourishing. So you'll see now lots and lots of trees and leaves in our visuals. We also found it really important. We'd established which 5 themes we were going to take our program on, and we decided to create logos around that. And we actually put it out to the students, and the students, we had a competition to create logos. By doing that, you might think we were jumping ahead of the game, but actually it gave us something real to hold on to. We'd created something without all of the materials. We had a logo and we had also our 5 themes with sub logos. We could hook ideas onto it. Suddenly it became real. And then really importantly, where does this program, or where does wellbeing want to fit into your school day? We're very, very lucky that we can now put Grow Well into our curriculum and we have a standalone lesson. But I know that other schools that isn't probably the right time or the right thing to do within the setting that you've got. So therefore, where are you going to fit it? How long are you going to dedicate to actually giving over to wellbeing in your day? So those were some of the basics that we started off with. But if you're thinking about another question on how to start, please do put that on in the chat and we'd be happy to talk about it as we end this presentation. Thank you, Justine.
Thanks, Amy. So as Amy mentioned, our programme is rooted in 5 core skills, and those 5 core skills is the skill of self-awareness, noticing, understanding, self-management, managing your emotions to deal with difficult situations, relationship skills, the skill of being able to form, build, maintain positive and healthy relationships, responsible decision making, so we are promoting reflection and making decisions on informed advice, and also that social awareness, which is another of our Academy's priorities, is a cultural competence. So why root our programme with these 5 core skills? Well, these 5 core skills reach into every area and every corner of wellbeing, and this was a really good place for us to start. We needed a differentiated programme that could navigate a learning pathway from FS2 all the way up to year 13. We wanted our students to learn, to understand, to build, apply, develop, strengthen and master lifelong skills that could enable them to lead positive and fulfilling lives. But the key to our programme is the flexibility. Flexibility is key so that we can adapt to the growing needs of our students. As we know, not all students grow, learn and flourish in the same way. So flexibility allowed us to identify the need and to approach and address that need. It also allowed us to deal with the complications and maybe the challenges that our third culture children deal with. We are a very diverse academy, and some of our children have been taken away from their roots, and our programme accounts for that and helps them with that. Also adapts to current world affairs, trends and patterns identified through our triangulated data, such as the census, our past data and our own internal student survey. This programme, because it leans into flexibility, can then pitch the depth of a Grow Well session. So once the need is identified, the programme guides how to make the session effective, appropriate, and also purposeful. And threaded throughout our Grow Well programme is the development of that emotional intelligence that is so much needed for our children to react with the world around them and make a positive impact. Amy, could you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So on the image in front of you, you'll be able to see a very quick snapshot of an example of the learning journey that our children undertake from FS2 up to post-16 stage. These have actually been taken from our self-awareness and self-management theme. So in FS2, you can see it's been stripped back to the bare basics, where our children are encouraged to just identify, name and compare a small selection of emotions. And that's building on the skill of self-awareness that will naturally develop into self-management. Then you can see in year 6, these are stepping stones going through our academy. And when you get to year 6 in primary key stage, we are encouraging our students to master the skill of identifying and managing challenges such as dysfunctional thinking. And then up to year 13, we then get our children to master the self-regulation. We navigate, we direct, we guide them to be able to emotionally self-regulate, to build that sense of mental resilience and deal with difficult times. Thanks, Amy. So how did we implement the Grow Well so it could touch every area of our academy's curriculum? Well, first of all, as Amy suggested, we devised a timetable that allowed for 30 minutes in Key Stage 1 and 1 hour in Key Stage 2. So this is a weekly timetable standalone session where our children have that valuable time to hone in on these 5 core essential skills, to master them, develop them and strengthen them. We also have a wide range of parent engagements that show our parents the journey of the Grow Well programme so that they can utilise these skills at home and continue to embed that language and those visuals. The wealth of our engagement resources include pre-recorded videos and also live engagement sessions. We also implemented the Grow Well to account for current trends, so our year groups would share the concerns, the issues that are arising in their cohorts so that sessions could be designed around that. Our assemblies are a huge part of our Grow Well programs too. We take the selected topic of the assembly and we make those visible, strong links to the Grow Well programme. And one of the 5 core Grow Well skills will be the focus of the assembly alongside the topic. And this gives our students that really precious, valuable time to reflect through questioning so that they continually are developing that skill. Progress is celebrated. It's not just about attainment, it's about the whole child. It's not just the academic child. We balance IQ with EI and we make sure that the whole child is encouraged to flourish. So progress is celebrated in assemblies, end of term assemblies, class visits, individual recognition. And also the Grow Well is implemented and grounded in our academy events. I mean, just to name some of our academy events that have unfolded so far this year would be Emotional Intelligence Week, Mindfulness Week, World Mental Health Day, and also World Gratitude Day. Upcoming, we have next month, I think this is, we will also be participating in Equality Day and celebrating that with our students and all of our stakeholders too. And it was really important for us as Academy that this, although it was a timetable session, was not isolated to 30 minutes a week or an hour a week or just in our assemblies. We are now encouraging all of our specialist teachers to apply that Grow Well language, use those visuals, so our children again are seeing those visible connections between the Grow Well sessions, assemblies at every corner of the curriculum, so our children are continuing to grow in every area of their academy life. So as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we could see the impact on our data in our census and also in our past data and our internal survey data too, which is something that we'll talk about later. But what about the individual student stories? Something that we are very passionate about in our academy. What about the individual students? So just to show you an example from primary, here we have student A, who is a male year 5 student. It was very apparent that this student was experiencing heightened emotions and was having a challenging time managing these emotions. The self-perception of himself was quite negative. He was very judgmental of himself and was putting a lot of unnecessary pressure on himself too. And it was very clear that there was a lot of dysfunctional thinking there. This was inevitably having an impact on his learning, the friendships and relationships that he was forming, and was also adding pressure to family life. So our Grow Well sessions were designed to develop not only his skills, but other person's skills as well, dependent on where these trends were arising. Interventions were tailored to meet the needs of this student. And again, our assembly focused to help with coping strategies and developing and strengthening that skill. We also worked with the family so that they could continue to support and enable that continuation of that development of that skill at home, again with the language and the coping strategies that were being exposed to this student.
I'll just take you on a secondary impact story. Student X, as we'll call her, female, graduated in 2021, and at the beginning of post-16 she was diagnosed with an eating disorder. She also had diagnosed anxiety and depression, and in the past scores her learner self-regard was 1.9. Feelings about college, 9.8. Perceived learning capabilities, 11. Her CAT scores, all 90 plus. But during her IB mock results, when they came out, it was quite alarming that actually all of this was playing havoc with her, and her progress was quite worrying. To pass the IB, you need 24 points out of 45, and she was sitting at 14. And at that point, when we saw those mock scores, my heart did sink, because I knew that we'd have to find some really, really strong one-to-one intervention time to help her. We crafted our Grow Well interventions bespoke to meet her needs. We had one-to-one weekly interventions targeting those specific needs of the past data. She retested before leaving WSO on her pass, and her learner self-regard increased to 74.4. Her perceived learning capabilities increased to 68, and her actual IB scores was 36 out of 45. That for us was just confirmation that what we're doing is working. What we're doing with tailoring and actually giving over time with our bespoke team of 23 people now is working. Class teachers buying into this and seeing the work that's going into actually tailoring the program is working, as we start to see less and less referrals to counsellors, behavioural problems. So we can say to you now that bespoke effort, it does have impact. But how do you get it right? And this is really important, because staff are key. You need to make sure that you have complete and utter buy-in, but also that you're not just looking at the students' well-being, that actually you're looking at staff well-being. What are you doing to make sure you are building great relationships? You are keeping staff healthy and happy, because if you've got staff in the classroom that aren't healthy and happy, then that's just going to come across in their teaching. And then you start to see that breakdown of relationships and the well-being go in a way that you don't want it to, and it affects everything else. So we work really, really hard at WSO at making sure we're supporting the people that are making this program work. So with our TAs, we value their time, because there are a lot of our TAs are doing those one-to-one interventions, taking students out of class in primary. We need to appreciate them, say thank you to them. So we have our TA Appreciation Day, where they come off their teaching responsibilities and they go and have fun, have food and drinks, pre-COVID, but that we appreciate them now in a different way. But class teachers, we have appreciation days for our class teachers where they get food and little treats and presents. We make a lot of class teacher shout outs, lots of recognition in our bulletin that goes out once a week to staff. During lockdown, we made sure that we were hosting game shows and we were delivering prizes such as takeaway vouchers and things like that. We had well-being tips, book clubs, film shares, and we, as you can see on our weekly bulletin, we have a staff well-being survey that goes out on a weekly basis where our staff can share their worries or concerns, and they know someone will follow that up. One of our senior leadership team will come in and make sure that we're supporting that need. We have something called WSO Connected, where we give ways how our staff can connect not only with the community outside, but also within school. Are there people sharing the same interests as you? And also each week our counsellors will share some really valuable wellbeing tips and advice. Really importantly, as a mother myself, childcare supervision on training days. Little things like that, those little wins where staff go, I've got to come in, I've got no childcare, I'm going to have to pay for it. Just take that away. And that really does go a long way. We've got our professional development, flexibility, so class teachers can choose what they dip into and what they don't want to dip into, and that just, you know, that flexibility just allows people who haven't got all the time in the world just to kind of have a little bit of a think about where they want to concentrate their efforts. We have counselling therapy sessions for our teachers and our students. We offer grief support, and we do offer refreshments and not only drinks, meals on training days. But like Justine touched on earlier, this support goes beyond our teachers. You have to consider all of your stakeholders in this process for it to work and for it to really have legs of longevity. So we really do involve our parents where we can by offering those high quality parent engagement sessions, by having those one-to-one conversations. Our heads of house are fantastic at contacting parents and having those one-to-one conversations and offering our support where we can. Really, by having everyone working together, that's why we're seeing the progress and that's why we're seeing the buy-in. Thank you, Justine.
So as Magnus mentioned earlier in the presentation, we are coming to the end of the Wellbeing Consensus. So how are we going to keep this momentum going? Well, first of all, we designed an internal student survey, and this is loosely based on the KHDA census. However, it's a lot smaller. We ask our students to participate every half term. It takes about 10 minutes for them to complete. But it allows us to have regular insight into our student wellbeing, gives us a snapshot every few weeks so that we can identify any needs, we can track and monitor student wellbeing. It's really important for us that we didn't wait for a year to get our results of our student wellbeing, but that we had this regular practice to tap into it. As I said before, the many masks that our students wear, it gives us that insight to what's behind the mask. We are presently developing our sister programs of Move Well, Physical Wellbeing and Eat Well for nutritional facts and support. Our teaching assistant training, as Amy hinted at earlier, we do have wellbeing intervention sessions, weekly ones. So we are developing the knowledge or understanding of our teaching assistants so that they can develop these interventions using, again, the Grow Well language and the Grow Well visuals. Also professional development. For our staff at school, we have offered mental health first aid trainings to our SLT and heads of years. We have the accepted committed therapy training, cognitive behaviour therapy training, empathy lab, AS psychology qualifications, in-house cultural competence training, and also mindfulness. And this all together helps to empower our staff so they can drive the Grow Well programme forward as well and continue to support all stakeholders in their wellbeing journey. Tracking and monitoring wellbeing is really important to us as an academy. It also helps our counselling team so that they can have a bit of a backstory provided with that history of a student should they potentially have to be referred to counselling therapy. What we want to do is to ensure that we are continuing to raise our student voice, and our student council across the academy will be crucial in this. What do they want to see? What does wellbeing look like to them? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? Where do they think we can improve, and what are we doing well at? Our student voice is really, really important. We have also just designed and resourced a student wellness room, a room where we are going to encourage our children to develop that skill of self-awareness and self-management with meditation, mindfulness, breathing exercises, and just a place to be. We were also currently designing our adult wellness room too. And the last thing that I'm going to mention is to make sure that our Grow Well programme continues to grow and adapt according to the needs identified for our school community. And that means that we're never at a final end. We will continue to grow and branch out so that we are doing our very best to be proactive and not just reactive, but ensuring that our all of our students are on the beginning to a very strong and supportive learning pathway of wellbeing and success. Thank you very much for the attention and time that you've given to our slides today. And I think now, Magnus, this is the part of the presentation where maybe we can answer some of the questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Justine, and thank you, Amy. Wonderful, informative presentation there. I think it's apparent, you know, we have a good 160 teachers, counselors, and school leaders on this call. I think it's apparent that this is a very, very important topic, and it's wonderful to see the participation. We're now going to move on to the Q&A aspect of this webinar, and I can see in the live chat feature on the right-hand side of your screen that we have several people that are posing some questions. So we do encourage you to pose your questions that you have for Justine and Amy. I do want to just commend you. I heard you mention you have a bespoke team of about 26 teachers. That is just commendable. It's wonderful news that the school really dedicates a lot of time and effort to this. But we're now going to touch base on a couple of the questions that were pre-submitted in the registration forms. And I have a question here. You mentioned in your slides that you tried previously to develop a wellbeing program when you used resources from, for instance, the UK or Australia, but you mentioned that it did not meet the needs that you were looking for. So if you just want to take us through, you know, what makes your school or your journey so unique, and what sets you apart from the research from, for instance, the UK and Australia, and what is the distinction? Where is the distinction most visible?
I think obviously with teachers coming from the UK and Australia and parts of Europe, we are going to bring forth what we know, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the trouble is we're trying to fit what was predominantly in England, even though it's very multicultural. The resources that they use are very British, and obviously there are things on a lot of the frameworks coming out of the UK and Australia that we can't touch on here in the UAE. They're not culturally sensitive, and the issues that are arising, we have to be very, very aware of how we go about sort of highlighting these things and being aware of where we are in the world. So instead of having to constantly adapt, we thought, well, what do we want our students to know? We can be culturally sensitive, so we'll just start creating our own. We can see the main themes, and let's just now tailor it to where we are in the world, because obviously there's lots of topics in the UK that they cover at a very young age, and we can't do that here. So if you're reworking it, you may as well create it.
Completely understand that.
I feel as well, because we are an academy of over 190 different nationalities, and we want to celebrate that diversity. Whereas the frameworks that are coming from Australia and the UK, quite rigid in their structure. And as we mentioned in the presentation, flexibility is key. It allows us to adapt it to make it current and purposeful, to ensure that we are supporting the student need and not just following a framework. That was really important to us.
Thank you so much. We have a question here asking about how do we bring the motivation to all the stakeholders, and how do we essentially get the support and buy-in from, for instance, parents and students. Can you talk us through a little bit about, you know, how did you go about inquire about the student needs and the parent needs and so forth, and what has the reaction been overall?
Justine, do you want me to start? Or,
yeah.
I think in the beginning, it's making parents aware. I remember probably 3 years ago now, Justine, we stood and we talked to parents about what is well-being. You know, putting it on parents' radar. A lot of parents don't understand the definition of well-being, and they don't understand that positive correlation between well-being and academic and social success. So it's stripping it right back. You need to educate and upskill your stakeholders, because once they understand the importance, you'll then get buy-in. But I think it comes back to the team that we have as well. we have an incredibly passionate team who stand up with sheer passion in their voices when they sell things. But it's important to know your stuff, know your reading, know your stats, and bring forth your census data to head of year meetings, because that data is telling you a story. And if you've got your dips in data, then you need to address that. How are you going to get out of it? And I think if you just say we need to improve well-being, you'll have a lot of people say, well, why? Why do we need to? The results are good. Why do we need to improve well-being? So it's actually just upskilling people about the impact. We're now lucky enough that we're in the position that we have those impactful stories that we can use to show staff this is what's happening. But as well, current affairs. There's hundreds and hundreds of celebrities out there that sing about well-being from the rooftops. You know, you've got cricket players taking time out because they need a well-being break. Simone Biles in the Olympics, you know, she was voicing her concerns about her own well-being to the point at which she was strong enough to step away from her position in the Olympics. It's all around us, but it is about drawing it and putting it on the radar. Put it in your school development plan, put it on action plans in departments, small little steps, but you've got to start with passion and you've got to start with the why.
And I feel, as just Amy said, be very transparent with your data, be honest, share that with your skill community. And it's also about developing that understanding of for the Grow Well programme, the 5 core skills. So engaging your teachers with training, parent engagement, so they have a good understanding of the message behind those 5 core skills. We were very lucky in the fact that in 2019, we launched the Grow Well programme. So when lockdown happened, our children were very aware of those 5 core skills and were used to exposure to that Grow Well programme, so that wellbeing sessions were still continuing to take place during lockdown. And that was actually shown as an impact in our past data the following year, because we actually rose in our scores in the past data, so it showed that impact was there, that even though our children were in lockdown, they were still supported, as well as families were still supported by the school community, and in particular by the Grow Well programme.
Thank you, Justine. I just want to touch upon one thing you mentioned, Amy, there. What is well-being? We have a question here. How do you differentiate between well-being programs and counselling programs? Does well-being and counselling, does that go hand in hand, you would say? Or please elaborate a little bit on that. Yeah.
We're incredibly lucky that our school counsellors are part of our wellbeing team. I don't think it can work as a separate entity, and their knowledge is amazing, and their knowledge of the mind and how that works really does aid what the rest of us do, really. But how we distinguish it is the counsellors are there to provide that one-on-one support, but in the Grow Well sessions, we're tailoring the needs of PASS for each individual year group. So in the sessions, we're giving the strategies, because it's always the case that we were finding at the caseload of counsellors was so high that our poor counselling team couldn't quite cope with the amount that they were having. So we were like, well, how can we stop the queue of students? Because whilst, you know, we need to empower them to not just go straight there, let's try and work it out ourselves. So it's very much, we have that kind of symbiotic relationship. We can't work without one another. But in the Grow Well sessions, we've got the strategies to try and prevent. Obviously, sometimes those strategies just don't work for some children, so then they'll go over to the counselling programme. But behind the scenes, the counsellors really do feed into our network of the expertise around what we're providing.
Thank you so much, Amy. In your example there, you mentioned the secondary student, and you had created a bespoke program for that particular student that included one-on-one weekly intervention sessions. Can you just briefly share with us how you developed those individual sessions and sort of what is the process to make it more bespoke?
So luckily with post-16 students, they do get those study periods on their timetable. So we have that flexibility to bring those students out. But what we did, we homed in on those 3 big areas, and we were quite honest with her and said to her, we need to find ways to get you from where you are now to in a position where you feel comfortable to actually go forth. I mean, the exams were cancelled in the end, but go forth and complete all of your coursework. We're not thinking long term, we're not thinking about university and life. We're trying to get you from here to here, a really short space. So how do we do that? So we unpicked the points of her past data. So she was talking, we identified that learner self-regard was the issue. So we had our first session was just basically setting the scene. What is it about learner self-regard? Do you understand what that means? Because first of all, we had to establish that her results were actually meaningful, that sometimes we do find that the children just click through and they don't know what they've done. So we needed to unpick that. Was this the true representation? So I remember sitting with her and going through what it is about, you know, learner self-regard, that's having that mental block and stopping it. And then what is it about preparedness to the curriculum that's stopping her? And once we had those one-on-ones and she started to open up about the really nitty-gritty things that are stopping her, then we could start on a weekly basis just coming in with some strategies to really help her. But you'll find, I mean, those one-on-one sessions are very valuable, but we're actually finding now that we need less and less because we're empowering the students in our Grow Well program.
That is great to hear. Thank you, Amy. We have another question here which talks about how have you structured the Wellbeing leadership team? Have you developed school champions within each classroom and such? Are you involving students there as well to spread the message?
So as we mentioned in the presentation, it's really important for us to encourage our student voice. So our students feel that they've been heard, and that's something that we're going to drive forward to keep the momentum going. Mm-hmm. The leadership team is actually drawing in on all of the expertise of many people within our school community. That includes, of course, our school counselling team. It also includes our heads of year, our heads of houses, anybody who has a passion and a role within wellbeing, and it's drawing in all of that expertise that we can continue to develop and evolve the Grow Well program. And I think every school is going to be very unique in how they structure that leadership team, dependent on what they want to design and where they're going to pull that expertise from. But that, as WSO, is something that we've definitely done.
And I think it's important that Justin and I will lead the Grow Well program, but you know, we couldn't do it without. Justin has in primary, obviously the class teachers and the specialist teachers are a little bit different, but Grow Well planners to help with the planning, because you know, these class teachers, they see the children all the time, they know how to pitch the work to meet each year group. We need their expertise. In secondary is a little bit different because even though we're working as a collective academy, the way that obviously their school day is different to the primary school day. So we have our champions, just like you have literacy champions in English or something, you know, people that take hold of, you know, the SPAG and things like that. It's the same with Grow Well. You need those people to start those fires. And it might just be that person or that teacher that loves yoga, you know, and loves meditation, but that little spark, that's what's going to get others enthused, and that's what we're starting to roll out now and asking for. Who wants to be our champion? Who wants to be the person sitting in the English department, sitting in the history department, going, where's our well-being in our planning? You know, and keeping everyone accountable for what we're providing.
Thank you. I know a lot of the question here relates to also how do you incorporate sort of this Wellbeing Bespoke program into the curriculum? How do you make it really work? And we have a question here. How do you execute wellbeing activities during the tight academic schedules, examinations and practices and lessons and so forth, you know, particularly with secondary students? What tips and tools would you give to them?
We have a very, very clever timetable manager. a really, really talented man, who we have worked incredibly hard to manipulate our school day, still making sure that we're giving everything to the ministry requirements. We have had to tweak our break times and our lunch times, our tutor times in the morning, but we are incredibly lucky that we've now in secondary got a fixed hour on the timetable that's bespoke. Primary, a little bit less time, isn't it, Justine? But it's there in the timetable as well. But it is actually looking at where you can make those amendments. The timetable is really important, and I know other schools have it in pastoral time in the mornings, but kind of 15 minutes we thought just wasn't enough to get over the meaning and the strategies. And people, when they come in the mornings, children are late, and it just, we don't get that full buy-in. So really do look at where you can make those 1% marginal gains. Is it that you cut off maybe 10 minutes of break time and then knock off 5 minutes? We had an hour lesson blocks in secondary. Knock off 5 minutes of those throughout the day. You've created yourself a lovely time that you can add in to grow well. So little things like that, playing with the timetable, it's worth doing, definitely.
Magnus as well. Sorry to interrupt. We're very lucky here at WSO because we have a leadership team that value well-being. It is a priority. It is about the whole child, not just the academic child. It's one of the reasons why I still work at WSO, because of the importance placed on well-being. So as Amy said, that structure, just having it there, it's not an option. It's an expectation. So it's there on the timetable and it's delivered weekly. And with regards to making sure that this touches every area of our curriculum, as Amy mentioned before, you will always have those people that come forward because they are passionate about well-being and they want to help you drive it forward. They want to lead on it within their department. And the warmth that's been received from our specialist teachers, because they can see the value of it, just applying that language and not just delivering those sessions, but for their own professional development as well, and for their own well-being, they are gaining a better understanding of how to protect and strengthen their well-being too.
Wonderful, thank you so much. I'm just answering a question here. Wonderful. We are approaching the end of this webinar. I will have one more question. We just want to touch briefly as well on the early years, particularly as well. With the onset of COVID, of course, we can not mention COVID in this webinar, but with the onset of COVID, how has that had an effect on the Grow Well Bespoke program? Have you seen a greater need? I think maybe particularly with the younger kids who haven't really, learn this socialization, especially if they first year students as such. Have you seen you had to develop a bit more more personal intervention programs for those students?
Yes, and for our younger students, we do have weekly wellbeing intervention focus groups from FS2 up to year 6, and inevitably COVID is going to have an impact on emotional and social skills. So it's really important that we put these into place and that they were weekly and structured, and we have a wealth of resources in order to deliver activities. And it's very much more about engaging our children to make sure it's appropriate, age appropriate, but it's effective and it's purposeful. So whether that's an activity, whether it's a discussion, but yes, I think we're only just touching the tip of the iceberg, and we're probably not going to see the true full impact of COVID. And that again is why our program needs to be flexible to make sure that it's approaching and addressing those needs as they arise. But again, that we're being more proactive rather than just being reactive.
Thank you so much, Justine, for that. I want to say a big thank you, ladies. It's been wonderful. I've learned a lot. I hope the audience has learned a lot as well. It's a wonderful initiative you have, and you should both be really proud of what you've done, I must say. We're now going to move on to menti.com again. So I'm going to share my screen. If I can just encourage you to join me on menti.com for 2 more questions here. 1 second. Here. Can everyone see the Menti questionnaire? Yeah, wonderful, fantastic. If you could just give your overall, satisfaction marks here, the quality of the content of the webinar today, the structure of the webinar, and the presenters' preparedness for the webinar, we'd greatly appreciate that. So again, if you could all log on to menti.com and use the code 95123976, we'd greatly appreciate that. Before
we'll look away, Magnus. We won't look, and then people can type the results.
Absolutely, absolutely. What I want to do is I want to just move over to the final question here. I'd love to hear from the audience members. What has been the main takeaway from today's webinar? Well, we've learned a lot from Amy and Justine today. It's been a real eye opener, I must say, and it's impressive how a simple well-being program can make such a difference. So I do encourage you to just a couple of words. What has been the key main takeaways from today's webinar? Greatly appreciate that. I'm sure many of you are keen to get started with your bespoke well-being program and get your pool of well-being champions and teachers involved, and also to engage with the parent community and the students as well, of course. And just like Amy mentioned, you know, the initial research aspect, you know, to find your own framework, the framework that works for you, that would be fantastic. Wonderful, our first answering. So the key takeaway from today's webinar, incorporating well-being into the school system as part of a daily routine. That is wonderful. To make it daily and not to make it weekly or monthly, but certainly to make it daily. And again, to develop bespoke program strategies, absolutely. If there is a will, there is a way, absolutely. Every school has to get inspired and work towards the well-being of students. Wonderful. Whole school approach, importance of surveys and census in driving well-being, absolutely. I think the Dubai Wellbeing Census for the last 5 years has been absolutely excellent and what we needed in Dubai. And I'm hoping that most of you schools, you know, you've got the data now and you've got the experience with these surveys to build on that momentum. It is a whole school approach, work as a community and team. Thank you so much, very inspiring. That is wonderful to hear. It really has to be part of the school fiber. I couldn't agree with you more. Wellness pointers for the staff too, yes. Amy mentioned about all the wellness activities for staff and for students, absolutely. And the counseling service that you offer as well, I think that's commendable. Involve more staff to enhance the well-being of all students, bespoke strategies, how important it is to embed in all curriculum areas and how we need to have all stakeholders invested in it. I would especially like to know what types of activities you have included across the different year groups. Amy, would you like to answer that, or we leave that for later?
There's so many. There's a wealth. Obviously, we have lots of different subsections of those five themes that we've got. So that there's a whole wealth of material there. But yeah, I'd
wonderful.
probably take another half an hour, Magnus. So
yeah. But it's wonderful. Most people seem to be on board with developing this bespoke framework, absolutely, and do the research and do consult with students and all the stakeholders in your development of all this. So I just want to say a big thank you. We're just going to leave it for the final slide here. So the webinar today is recorded and will be put in our library on the New Ways page under the banner What Works X. So we do encourage you, by tomorrow it will be uploaded there for you to watch it again. But apart from that, I want to say a big thank you. We had a great turnout today. I want to say again a big thank you to Justine and Amy. It's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you for taking the time out. Wonderful presentation there. And the Q&A section as well. For the rest of you, I just want to say a big thank you for spending the afternoon with us. I will let you know our next upcoming webinar will happen on the 10th of February. It's a Thursday between 3 and 4 again, and it will touch upon teacher well-being. So we will discuss in that meeting more about the orientation process for new teachers. We'll talk about the mental health aspect of teachers, existing teachers. So that should be a wonderful webinar. It's going to be hosted together with Dubai American Academy, so Tammy and her team. But for us, I want to say thank you. Enjoy your rest of your afternoon. Bye-bye from us. Thank you.